What's on the docket today? What will we document?
Hello and welcome to Doll Doc. Today we will be exploring the X-Files with a twist. I was watching a YouTuber named Bunny one day on her channel Banana Peppers, and she asked people to mail in blue items. She titled this project Blue Book. This created a spark of inspiration. I've been wanting to create an alien doll and came up with an idea. What if this alien was an agent on her own planet with their own version of X-Files that studies humans? I wanted to set a couple challenges for myself though with this doll. First, the doll needed to be made out of mainly blue items. One gator green supply did sneak in. I did allow myself to use white, gray, and black as well, but I would try to incorporate as much blue as possible. Second, I wanted to make this doll out of mainly supplies I already had, so I didn't end up buying any new yarn or fabric for this doll. The goal was to try my best to stick with what was already in my craft closet. I knew this would be a little tough because I have very few blue art supplies, but challenge accepted.
Let's start doctoring.
To start off the blue theme, I went with this Laguna doll. The only two blue dolls I had were Laguna and Abby. I went with Laguna because of the webbing between her fingers. Bunny likes gators, so I decided this alien would have some reptilian features on her. Now to remove the glue and hair from inside the head. This Laguna doll surprisingly didn't have much glue. Once the hair is gone, it's time to wipe off the factory paint. I use 100% acetone for this. A cotton swab can help get into the little lip creases. With an X-Acto knife, I very carefully remove the fins on her arms. Once her body was prepped and ready, I whipped out my epoxy sculpt and got to work. I used several reference images of alligators to study the different features, especially their eyes. They have ridges of scales over their eyes that I wanted to replicate. I also studied the different textures of their scales and their muscle composition. As I was working on our sculpt, I remembered these dreams I used to have. I don't think they were nightmares because I wasn't scared of them. I just remember that in the dreams, I'd be walking somewhere and come across a bunch of alligators sleeping or swimming. I'd have to tiptoe around them not to wake them up, or I'd have to jump from one gator back to another to get across. They were more exciting adventure dreams than scary. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite reptile is, or if you even like them at all. The new sculpting tools I bought really helped out a lot with this doll. I found these on Amazon for really cheap, and the silicone works great with epoxy. For the belly scales, I tried to get the epoxy as thin as I could and then sculpted light grooves into them. Most scales you see on animals are offset, but alligator stomachs actually have more lined up scales, which I thought was unique. I laid the epoxy down randomly so the body wouldn't be symmetrical. If you haven't worked with epoxy sculpt before, one big tip is to use water when trying to smooth it out and blend it into the skin. I laid these patches down so I could give her skin tons of texture. There's barely any smooth spots on a gator. ears just weren't working for me. So I carefully cut them off with an X-Acto knife and covered the areas with more epoxy sculpt. When working on these scale ridges, it was really helpful to dip my sculpting tools into a little bit of water. If you're wanting to keep your doll still posable, be careful about how much epoxy sculpt you put around the joints. As I looked at the reference photos, I saw that the limbs of an alligator had a lot of muscle, and in a way where parts were very thick and then tapered off at the joints. So I decided to bulk up this doll's limbs and add some of the ridged armored scales from the alligator. Throughout this process, I moved back and forth between sections of the doll, letting pieces cure before adding anything new to them. When I was happy with the sculpt, I let it fully cure and then mixed up some blue and white acrylic paint. I thinned my paint out with water and coated the doll with several layers before sealing her with MSC. If you paint with acrylic paints in layers, you're less likely to end up with streaks. Now, alligators aren't one single color. They have various shades of green, brown, and black in their scales. So I decided my alien gator girl needed that too. I wanted a really thin, almost transparent wash of patches and speckles of different blues. Then, light bulb! I remembered I had alcohol-activated paints from when I did special effects makeup. I dug out my palette and was delighted when I found that I had 2 different shades of blue. I wasn't sure how alcohol paints would react with MSC and acrylics, and if you're ever trying a new product, you might want to test it off of your doll first instead of just jumping in like I did. I got lucky and nothing was ruined. It ended up working out beautifully and gave me the exact result I wanted. I used a mixture of dabbing the color on with a torn up makeup sponge, along with using a paintbrush to splatter little speckles of color. When you're using the splatter technique and end up getting paint in places you may not want it, you can use 99% alcohol in a cotton swab to remove it. I just lightly dampened my cotton swab and it came off with a breeze. Also, one thing to note, this paint does require 99% alcohol to activate. Anything less won't do. Next, seal her again and break out the soft pastels and watercolor pencils. Time to deepen some details and give her a face. So, gator eyes have pretty much no white in them from what I've seen, so making parts of her eyes stand out was a little more difficult than normal, and I relied on my black pencils and soft pastels a lot to help give some contrast. The key to this face up was layering. Also, I apologize for going in and out of focus. I think with all the blue, my camera was not picking up what was actually the face. I enjoyed this face up a lot, especially getting to modify the face so much with sculpting, and the challenges only working with blue came with. Let me know below if you'd like more of these monochromatic dolls. I've seen a few of them floating around, and from this, it was actually really fun. At this point, I started working with my black and white pencils a whole lot more to try to pull some depth and contrast into the eyes. I definitely didn't want them looking just flat. I used some watercolors to deepen up these scales on her stomach, and I also went in the ridges of her back, just lightly patting away any excess if I got too much on. My gloves always need a good washing after a doll project. My final step to the face up is always adding white acrylic reflections and a layer of gloss varnish to the eyes and lips. With her face all ready and gator gorgeous, I moved on to the hair. With so much sculpting on her head, I opted out of a wig cap and decided to just glue Wefts directly on her head. Only one problem. I had a certain blue in mind for her hair and had only one shade of blue yarn, and it was far from what I wanted. Have no fear, soft pastels are here. I had plenty of white yarn though that I could recolor. To learn more in depth about how I color my yarn with pastels and how I make my wefts, I will link a tutorial I did down below. I also attempted to dye some of the yarn with synthetic fabric dye. The color I used was navy, and it said on the bottle it would work with 100% acrylic fibers, but it turned out a little more purple than blue in my opinion. So again, I used my soft pastels to bring some more blue into the hair. After her hair was dyed and wefts were complete, I began gluing it onto her head. I worked to the crown and around the sides some in one direction, then with the darker blue, I went in the opposite direction. She's ready for her photo shoot. When the glue dried, I combed her hair back and began to work on how I would style it. Then I recalled a hairstyle that Bunny has worn a few times. She curls and twists the sides back, and it's always so pretty. This also helped to mimic the ridges and muscles on a gator skull. Now remember earlier when I mentioned this doll was an agent working with an organization that studies humans, and in particular Bunny and the Swamp Family? Well, I decided to call her Agent Cayman. Cayman being Spanish for alligator, at least according to Google Translate. Agent Cayman couldn't travel to Texas without bringing along her research, so I designed some items to travel with her. First off, a parody binder of the poster in X-Files that says, "I want to believe." I printed these on cardstock, and whenever you fold the paper, Sometimes the white starts to show back through. This can easily be fixed with a colored pencil. For this binder, I filled it with her mission assignment, pictures of the channel banana peppers, facts about Texas, English definitions, and a note from the agent's findings throughout her research. I also included a top secret folder with redacted pages and pictures of banana pepper video screenshots. All of this would go into a blue parcel labeled with the agent's name and ID number. Once everything was cut out, I gathered pages into a binder clip and used an awl to poke a hole through them. Then I used floral wire to make little rings for the binder. To make these pieces more durable, I sealed them all with 2 layers of hard coat sealant. Now we have a little binder that we can flip through. I then started placing everything into its little box. Agent Cayman has even wrote little notes on the back of the pictures she took. Now just tie it up with embroidery thread. You might have noticed the cylinder machine looking thing in the background when I was doing her hair. Well, that is the cryogenic chamber that Agent Cayman will be traveling into Texas. Leave a like and a comment below if you would like to see how that was made. If you like this video, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. I post a new video each week. Now let's send Agent Cayman off to Texas. And who knows, maybe she will get to meet Bunny in her Project Blue Book video. I'm just hoping she arrives safe and intact. Agent Cayman, are you ready to leave for your mission? Locks activated. Power on. Cryogenic freezing activated in 3, 2, 1. Take off. Thanks for watching.